Hello, agentpreneurs, and welcome to episode 79 of the Daily List Report. We've got an incredible show for you today. We've got Bryan Casella, Team BC at eXp Realty. Bryan is all over the place in terms of social media. I mean, this guy's 160,000 subscribers on YouTube. I got that pulled up here right now. All you have to do is search for Bryan Casella on Google, and you're going to get links to all of these. We will also link to these in the comments and in the description. Bryan's got a big following on Instagram. Lots of great coaching tips, lifestyle stuff. We're going to get into this with Bryan in just a moment, but he's got a really interesting approach to how he shares his message, how he coaches people. And then, of course, bryancasella.com is a great place to go to get lots of information, testimonials, products, coaching information, so on and so forth. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Bryan on right now. Bryan, why don't you say hello to the agentpreneurs of ListReports?
Agentpreneurs, what's up?
You like that term, Bryan?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I haven't heard that before, so that's awesome. And it's very relevant, right? I believe that to be true. So it's a combination of both. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited and getting together and doing these type of interviews, I believe, as opposed to a traditional video, I believe is most helpful for the agents and your audience. So I'm ready to roll.
That's awesome, Bryan. I am too. Thanks so much. Hey, Bryan, one of the things I love to do is I love to give people a chance to get to know our guests. So, Bryan, why don't you just take a couple minutes here and just talk about who you are? How'd you get into real estate? How'd you get to where you are? Just give them a sense of who Bryan is.
Absolutely. So my name is Bryan Casella. I've been in Southern California for my whole life, in and around the Los Angeles area. I currently reside in Covina, which is about probably 15, 20 miles directly east of downtown LA. My family is immigrants from South America, from Argentina. I'm the first one born from my family in America. I have dual citizenship. My parents came over here with basically nothing. I was raised very humbly. I spent a lot of time back in Argentina through my childhood. A lot of times I'd spend the summer here, there. So I grew up seeing a very sharp contrast between the States and a third world country. Still don't have cement roads, running water, electricity, and things that we take for granted here. So I think that gave me a really good perspective, and it instilled something in me at a young age to really work hard, right? You fast forward at about age 10, I start playing basketball. I dedicate my life to it all the way through college. I play collegiately. I played professionally for a few years. I had two really serious injuries to my left ankle that resulted in two surgeries. I stopped playing after that at around age 24, 25. For about a year, I'm sitting there moping, feeling sorry for myself, like most people, thinking my life is over. Then I come across real estate. I realized very quickly that, some of the attributes to my character that I forged over the last, decade or so or more in basketball would aid me tremendously in real estate or anything entrepreneurial. I just happened to focus on real estate because it seemed intriguing to me. I get my license, I start working, and I just took a very old school approach, right? I did a lot of cold calling, door knocking. I learned from Mike Ferry and some of the OGs, like the godfather of real estate or whatever they call him, right? I still follow him to this day. And I just kind of very quickly adapted to that. And then simultaneously, I caught on to the wave of social media and video very early. What we're seeing now, I saw 6, 7 years ago, which is why I started doing video. And in that process, I discovered a vehicle for me to develop myself. And the further I got into this game, the more I realized that it's really about us and, reaching our potential as a human being. I know that's kind of fluff talk for a lot of people nowadays, and they kind of discount it. But I truly believe that when you maximize your potential as an individual and you start to unleash some of these things that have been dumbed down in us over the years through conditioning and how we were raised, you really start to perform at a much higher level, regardless of what you do. It's just, in this case, it happens to be sales and being in real estate.
That's great, Bryan. And just to that point, right, we talk a lot in our own company with our own teams about this idea of limiting beliefs. And I think that's what you're talking about, right, is those limiting beliefs come from a combination of factors: how we're raised, our circumstances, our friends, frankly, who we surround ourselves with. So, when you think about the videos that you make, the coaching that you do, limiting beliefs has got to be a big part of that. And how does somebody break through those limiting beliefs? Like, I can never do more than 10 listings a year. I can never do more than whatever. These ceilings that we put in place that frankly are artificial. How does somebody bust through those walls?
Yeah, great topic. I realized very quickly that I had a lot of limiting beliefs because I had information coming from one end, which would be like a mentor or somebody trying to help me, or my own, self-discovery through research, and not really videos at the time because it wasn't that big back
Yeah.
then, but like reading books and, going to seminars. And then I had this construct that I had created in my mind based on what you just described, cultural stuff, how you're raised and things of that nature. So people need to first identify that, what you limit yourself mentally to is what you're going to create, what you're going to attract, and what your reality is going to be. So if you grow up, as an example, like I did, with miswired beliefs about money and finances, or just lack thereof of any of that kind of knowledge, once you step into this realm of real estate and making commissions, it can seem overwhelming, and you're going to fill in those blanks with whatever your conditioning is. So what I started doing was saying, look, I want to take a practical approach at busting limiting beliefs. So as an example, right, let's fill in the blank. I'm being told by a lot of people around me who, again, have zero association with business or real estate, but they want to give me their advice, right?
Yes.
Which is red flag number one.
Yes.
Okay. I'm being told I'm too young, right? At the time I get my license, I have braces. I'm probably 27. People think I'm like 22, 23, right? With the braces. They're like, oh, dude, you're too young. I wouldn't trust you with my home. No one's going to listen to you. You don't know what you're doing. You have no experience. You've never done sales, right? I mean, if we're going to relate it to a movie, it's like they open up a scroll and like this mile-long scroll opened up.
Runs down the floor, right, and out the room.
Right. So I said, you know what? I'm going to now, even though I'm new and I don't know any better, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a practical approach, and I'm going to test these theories and beliefs to see what's true. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go out there and talk to people about real estate, being a new agent, and I'm going to see, is age a limiting factor? And very quickly, right, I started keeping track, because we're supposed to track our numbers in real estate, conversations, leads, appointments. And even though I didn't have a stellar first year, I did pretty good, right? I think I did 13 transactions my first year.
I think that's
I had a lot of conversations, a lot of hurdles. I started realizing very quickly, as I looked at the data through my experience, which is the key, ladies and gentlemen, you have to earn this through experience. I realized very quickly, dude, age has nothing to do with it, right? My ability to connect with somebody, list their home, or get business has zero correlation with the number that indicates my age as a human being, like zero. Yeah. And I would talk to 1,000 people, and sometimes I'd ask people, would it bother you to have a newer person in the business? And they're like, no, actually, I'd prefer it because they have more energy and they seem like they're going to work harder and represent me better.
They want it more, right? Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So very quickly I realized, okay, then had I never tested it though, I would just believe what the next person told me, right? So the first filter for me that I improved was, okay, this person giving me this advice, this limiting belief, are they qualified to give me advice in that sector, in that field? And for most people getting advice about like real estate, as an example, they're getting it from their mom, their dad, their uncle, their neighbor, who they may have good intentions, but they're simply giving their opinion or what they believe to be true in a subject matter that they have zero experience in. Second part was that I started testing it. And as I started testing it, man, very quickly, those limiting beliefs would crumble because I had firsthand experience that the belief that I wanted to work with, which was age doesn't matter, versus the one that I was given, which was limiting.
Yep.
Man, it just destroyed those other arguments. But I took that practical approach, which is just, I'm going to go out in the field and test it, which is, I believe, the best way to do it, because you'll get irrefutable proof that the limiting beliefs that you were given do not exist.
I think that's fair, Brian. I think, as I look at, running a technology company that supports the real estate industry, right? We are taking inputs from people that have experience and are smart, but we're doing our own testing, our own learning, right? We're making our own decisions as a result of that. Brian, one thing that's really interesting, and I'm really fascinated to get your perspective on this, is I've talked a lot on this show with people about this idea of building a brand, that if you're not known for something, you're not known for anything, right? And my belief has always been that the best brands are those that are truly authentic, right? You're never going to be successful trying to be someone that you're not. And what's interesting about you, right? And for those of you watching, check out Brian's YouTube channel. You come through front and center, right? In your content, in your Instagram, right? Like, it's you working out, right? It's you and your love for cars. I also love cars, so I appreciate that, by the way. It's sort of lifestyle and Brian and real estate kind of all rolled up into one. So When you started down this journey of creating content, and we've got lots of agents with tons of questions about how to create content, was it obvious that that was the path? How did you decide that this was going to be the persona that you would put forward, and that it was okay, frankly, to talk about cars and working out and all that stuff? Can you talk a little bit about how you built your brand?
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't start that way because, again, when I started, I didn't have the confidence, the awareness, the intelligence, the consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that I have now.
Yeah.
And I was like many other people. I mean, let's look at what we need to do as an agent or an entrepreneur. Again, we have to stand out, right? That's one of the biggest questions. How do I establish a brand? How do I separate myself from other people? Now, let's trace back to like our childhood and look at how we were brought up. What did we want to do in school? We didn't want to be alone because we were made fun of. We didn't want to stand out. You wanted to be one with the crowd. You wanted to be
That's
with the
right.
jocks or the musicians, right? So we're literally bred and molded from a young age to blend in. Then we're thrown out into the real world at 18 or 21 or whenever you graduated high school or college, and we're now told, forget what you just did for the last 21 years. Now you got to be independent. You got to be
Yeah.
on your own, and you got to stand out. And you're like, whoa, 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 how do I do this?
Yeah.
I've been taught, and I had to blend in. Otherwise, I was ridiculed. And what happens in the real world when you want to establish yourself and say, I represent this, I stand for truth, or I stand for this, you get attacked. And especially on social media, because everybody can hide behind their phone and type whatever they want.
That's the
So,
worst.
right, the keyboard warriors, like we call them,
Yeah,
right?
that's
so
right.
Now we're in this predicament, but again, we can trace it back to how we were conditioned, which a lot of this is we run on patterns as human beings, and people forget that, right? So it really is all mental when you trace it back. So when I came across this, I started realizing this and saying, man, I've been told to be one of many instead of the one. So I went through this process because there's many layers that you need to peel back. One would be being okay dealing with a criticism, comments, right? And a lot of pushback, because when you want to blaze a trail, when you want to go right, when everybody else is going left, they're going to point the finger and they're going to laugh at you and say, what are you doing? Come with us. You're crazy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Another thing I noticed is because of that, a lot of people are afraid to stand up for something or say, hey, my brand represents this, again, because they're attacked. And again, they're the minority to the majority. So it's a very, we can say, intricate process where you have to develop yourself and start taking steps. So I tell people this, right? If I'm going to give practical advice, that one thing on the horizon that when I say, okay, I want you to take a step towards, speaking your mind or standing for something, a lot of people will think immediately like, oh man, like what scares me the most is like making a post, drawing the line maybe on Facebook saying, hey, I support this because of what people are going to say, right? As I say that, or maybe getting on video and saying something, whatever that thing is where now me as a speaker is going to challenge you to do it, because that's the first step in this process. And that's how it started for me. I said, you know what? I'm going to start sharing some of these people that I'm studying and their beliefs on my Facebook and social media. And I'm going to be okay with the backlash that comes along with it, because those ideas and philosophies is what I vibe with, align with, and what I want to represent when it comes to my mission statement and my brand. So this is how you start establishing that and building that muscle, we can say. Because again, remember, you've been blending in the whole time and now you want to stand out.
That's right.
Even as a practical exercise, once this whole Corona thing is over and you can go out again, I challenge you guys to wear things that make you stand out. And watch how some people are going to point and laugh and talk or be like, oh, I don't like your outfit, it's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
So on every level, you're going to hear it, right? But you have to be able to deal with that pressure, because when you look at my content now, it's very polarizing. But I want to draw that line, right? I don't want people who support me where I have to walk on eggshells, where I'm so worried about doing something that if I do one thing in quotes that's wrong, I lose half my following because I built my reputation on smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
I want to put out who I am and what I represent and be clear about it. So my following is my following and they ride with me. And if you don't like me, that's perfectly fine. But you can find somebody else to go with, versus a bunch of people following me and supporting me who aren't really sure what I am, or they think that I'm something. And then when I start showing my true colors, they run away and say, whoa, I've been following you for 5 years. I didn't know that you like this or thought that, or, oh my God, that's ridiculous. So that's why I'm so open, man, because it's been a process to get there, but it's really not about me. It's about what I represent.
Yeah.
Okay. And whether you support it or not is fine with me, but I'm going to be who I am. And in this world, of smoke and mirrors and illusions and people not really being who they say they are, this is becoming like a lost art. But it's also simultaneously one of the reasons that my brand, I think, is so well known, whether people like it or not, is because I draw that line. And it's two sides of the same coin, right? You can't have attention and brand without receiving a ton of criticism and hate and everything else that goes with it. You cannot have one without the other. That's universal law. So people, I think, want the brand, but they want to avoid all the steps to get there and say, well, I want the attention, but I don't want any of the negativity, right? It's going to happen. If 1 out of 100 people hate on you, once you have 1 million followers, that one turns into like 1,000 or 10,000. That's just the nature of it. Exponentially, it'll go up. So it's a process you have to commit to, but understand that the payoff comes later on once you've established yourself and your mission statement is ABC. However, by the mission statement being ABC, it requires that you stand for something, right? And it's okay if people disagree. And I think that's how I can wrap it up and pass it back to you. You need to be okay with people disagreeing with what you believe in or what you represent, because that's the nature of it. People are always going to disagree with you.
Yeah. No, beautifully said, Bryan. And I agree with everything that you said, frankly. What it also speaks to, though, is confidence, right? It's so hard. And you know this. You were there, right? When you were, an early agent and someone sort of out of left field was like, hey, can you do this deal? Can you do this deal? It's so hard to say no to something, right? And I think that just takes confidence. And even what you're saying, which is, hey, I know who I am. I know what I stand for, but I don't want to offend somebody, to your point. And you end up with this like milk bread brand that's like right down the middle and nobody remembers you, right? Because you're totally vanilla. And how does somebody say, I need to step up? How does somebody get the confidence to say, I'm going to put myself out there in whatever way they're comfortable with, in whatever way is authentic to them? How does somebody do that?
Yeah. It starts small. You need to look at every piece of your life. We can even go back to the example with clothing. I mean, how many people maybe watching this aren't wearing that shirt that they want or pants that they want to wear or shoes because they're afraid of what people are going to say? And those are the micro steps that you need to take. As an example. Another one for me was I was very uncomfortable with my ability to deal with money in the beginning. So as an example, one thing I started doing was instead of paying $8 for the self-parking, I started paying $20 to get valet when I'd go to like an event just to test myself. Yeah, it was $12, but that step gave me so much more confidence now to do other things and start thinking about money differently. So
Interesting.
Whatever those hurdles are for people, they just have to start taking small steps like that, like making that post on Facebook, creating a video, right? Wearing something that maybe they're a little bit uncomfortable with. We've heard the saying, get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? A lot of people, they have social anxiety, right? So one of my challenges on my channel that I constantly tell people is go approach. If you've never talked to anybody and it scares you to death and you sweat bullets, say, you know what? I'm going to talk to one stranger every day for the next week. And it's difficult to do that because, again, you're sweating and your mind's running, like, oh my God, they're going to reject me and everyone's going to laugh at me and it's going to be on video and it's going to show up on MTV, right? Like we play this movie reel. Take a small step. Now, a lot of people will tell me, well, I can't take the step. Yes, you can. It just, this is where I believe we have to get people to take responsibility, right? Because me or anybody else, we can show you the door and say, that's where it is. It's unlocked, walk through, but you ultimately have to walk through. And what I think, man, and I'll pass it back to you, is a lot of people have gotten to the point where now they want to shift all control and responsibility to like us as a teacher to do everything for them. And I see this in the industry too. Like when I started, I was lucky to get like 20 or 30 minutes of my mentor's time per week. So I would gather experience all week, then come back to him and say, hey man, this is what I have to report. Versus now I'm getting messages from people saying, hey man, I'm thinking about getting my license, but I want a mentor and I want you to be there 24/7 and I need this help and you need to roll out the red carpet for me. It's like, dude, you got to take action. So just like I can't be there, someone can't be there to hold your hand to say, hey, go talk to that stranger. You ultimately have to say, you know what? I got to muster up the courage and break through this because it's not comfortable, but you ultimately are the master of your destiny and you have to take that step no matter how hard it is. So I'm not going to sit here and pep talk somebody for 3 hours about how to take that step. You just got to do it. And it has to become a priority to you. When I got in this business, I said, whatever comes my way, whatever, wall I need to topple over or whatever hill I need to climb, whatever ladder I need to go up, I'm going to do it because what's on the other end of it, I'm crystal clear about what I want as a result and I'm going to do anything it takes to get there. And that was just my mission statement from the beginning. I said, I'm going to do it. So if I have to talk to 100 strangers every day, no matter how scary that is, I'm going to do it because it's worth it. And that's kind of the decision that people need to make, because I think as a culture, we're getting a little bit too soft in the fact that we want other people to do things for us, but we need to start taking responsibility and saying, hey, this is my life. I signed up for real estate. I signed up for this. I said I want a brand. Now I need to step up and honor my word.
Yeah. Really well said. I personally love your approach. I like that sort of straight talk, like tough talk, whatever you want to call it. I like that very direct approach, but as you think, Bryan, about somebody, a newer agent, or even someone who's been doing it for a while, who's just been kind of on the fence, you talk about, look, if you put yourself out there, you're going to face criticism. It's going to happen. There's no question about it. And the further you put yourself out there, the more criticism you're going to get. The more successful you are putting yourself out there, the more criticism you're going to get. How does somebody handle that? How does somebody process that, right? When you get this really negative comment and somebody's like, they don't know you, right? But they're like calling you out for something. How do you handle that criticism? How do you personally process that? And how did you get better at processing that as you built your tribe, as you said?
Yeah. I mean, that subject we can kind of turn into this web, right? Where there's a lot of things that we can talk about. The first thing is this. I said, look, I noticed that when we tend to go out there as a business person, this is the first distinction that I made. When I'm putting my stuff out there, when I was going door to door, when I was calling, a lot of agents who are newer tend to take things personally. So the first lesson that I kind of taught myself and learned, I mean, I've read this in many books. I would credit an exact book or person, but I mean, I heard it from so many sources. It's tough for me to say one specifically. You have to remember that, like, when you're doing this business, people aren't rejecting you. They're rejecting your offer. So when I was out there going door to door or calling, I realized very quickly, look, they're not saying, hey, Bryan, I don't like you. They're just saying, dude, I don't want to buy or sell. Now, if they're getting emotional and they're saying, get the hell off my property or stop calling me, right? That's just a manifestation of where they're at in that moment. Because when I entered their world with that phone call, they might have just gotten off the phone and someone told them, hey, your mom just got killed or your mom just died, right? So of course they're going to be in an emotionally vulnerable state. You come in later saying, hey, you want to sell your house? And they're like, get out of here, right? So
Bryan, can I interject a quick anecdote, if you don't mind, just to that point, because it's so funny. So there's a thing called NPS. It's Net Promoter Score, and it's the thing that companies use. It's like a 1 to 10 scale. Basically, it says, how likely are you to refer this product to a friend, right? It's the way companies like us track our products. And we started calling people who gave us really low scores. So we called this guy who gave us a 1 out of 10, which is the worst possible rating. And we got on the phone with him. We're like, hey, man, what are we doing wrong? Why don't you like ListReports? He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I love ListReports. It's like, but dude, you gave us like a 1 like 2 days ago. He's like, oh yeah, I was having a really bad day that day. Right? He actually loves our product. He gives us a 1 because he had a bad day and he was just lashing out. He saw a scale and he's like, 1, 1, 1, right? Even though he actually likes us. So it's a very valid point you made there, Bryan.
Absolutely, man. And I'm glad you brought it up because that makes it more real to people,
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I said, look, they're if we're gonna name it anything or label it anything, they're rejecting my business identity, not me personally, because they don't know me. And the moment they hung up, they're not gonna remember who I am. They're not gonna see me on the street and be like, hey, I rejected you last week on the phone, loser. They're not gonna do that, right? So that was one. Another one is I said, look, when people tend to have an unfavorable reaction to something emotionally, in particular, I noticed we tend to be short-sighted in those moments, right? And what I mean by that is this. Let's say the whole week an agent called and talked to 200 people. Why are they making such a big deal about that one person who yelled at them? I'm like, so when I hear this from people, this is how I start dissecting it to help them, right? I literally, what I'm doing, I believe, and this is the way I see it, is I'm getting their eyes to look down and go up to see a bigger picture.
Yeah.
So they say, oh man, this guy was really mad. Okay, cool. So was that the only mad person? Yeah, that was the only mad person that day. They just went really overboard. How about all week? Did you get anybody else? No, everybody else was cool. How many people did you talk to this week? 250. So I'm like, okay, let's break this down. You talked to 250 people and one of them was mean to you. So pull out your calculator and give me the percentage on that. What is that, like 0.25% or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It's something ridiculous.
Yes.
So 1/4% of people gave you this unfavorable reaction and you're going to let it ruin your whole week. Does that make any sense? And then it starts dawning on them, right? So it goes to show that you've heard the saying, where focus goes, energy flows. So
Yes.
what we're doing now is and again, this particular mechanism, again, it's conditioned in us, because whenever we turn on media, right? I don't watch news or anything like that. I haven't for a long time, even though I have my opinions about things, right?
Yeah.
But anytime you look, and anytime I just happen to walk by a TV or see any of that, it's framed negatively, right? A lot of people's conversations, if you listen linguistically to what they're saying, is framed negatively.
Yes.
So of course now, when you have your experience as a human being, you're going to frame everything negatively. I mean, if I point out this picture to most people, in their mind, even if they may not admit it, they're going to be pointing out what's wrong with it. Oh, the color's a little bit off. Oh, that building's too short. Our perspective and filter on life is negative, so we focus on and only see typically the negative, which is why in this scenario, this person had one bad conversation out of 250, and they're not saying, I had 249 favorable conversations. If you just focused on that, you immediately would feel better. But that's where, again, we have to take responsibility and say, look, I'm putting too much time and attention and too much of my energy and emotion into this one person. How about I treat everybody the same? So let's give 249 acknowledgments to myself and then one negative one, and see how you feel. So as an exercise, I told people, get a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, right? And say, okay, I had one person who was a dick to me this week on the phone, right? Create what you perceive to be negative things. Now, on the flip side, I want you to write an equal amount, if not a greater amount, of positive things that have happened to you this week, right? And we can even just keep it in the umbrella of real estate. Now, I find, Randy, that 9 out of 10 people will struggle to find something positive because their perception is so warped that they can only see the negative. Like if they showed up every day on time, that would be a win. Hey, I showed up every day on time. Hey, I made all my calls, all my commitments, I honored them. That's all positive, by the way. Now, people might be listening and say, that's not positive. Yes, it is. You said, or you did what you said you were going to do. See, but that shows you how deeply entrenched this is into our consciousness as human beings, that we only see the negative. Well, so Bryan, I think this is a byproduct, I believe, of how we're brought up. But again, the moment you turn 18 and you're an adult, it's your responsibility to fix this programming that has been put into you. So I really think that's what it's at, man. We just need to become more aware of it, look at it from this perspective, and then say, okay, I need to do an exercise like this paper thing to test it. Because now I'm the opposite. I can find 200 positive things and only one negative. That's why I think my psyche has been able to spot the good things and be the way that it is I view the world much differently than the average person.
Yeah. Well, Bryan, you know, it ties very closely into why we coined this term agentpreneur, right? Obviously, you play on entrepreneur, right? As an entrepreneur, is a good one, right? Just like as a good agent, you have to have a level of optimism and positivity, let alone for a second confidence, all the other things, right? Which is that tomorrow can be the best day ever. Tomorrow can be better than today, right? I've been through an experience personally in my life where I had a company where it was going to be sold for a lot of money, and almost literally the next day that deal disappeared, right? So talk about the highest high to the lowest low. And but there's this optimism that it's going to happen. But to your point about this being programmed early, Bryan, you're totally right. I have children, okay? And my kids, when they were smaller, they'd come back, I'm like, how's your day? And they're like, you know, school's so hard, and like Susie, man, she's a real jerk, and it was hot today, and like lunch was terrible. I'm like, what are you doing, right? I'm like, so I changed it, right? I changed the script, and I'm like, hey, tell me something good that happened today. So that the first thing out of the mouth was, I got an A on a test. I helped out a friend who was in need, whatever it might be. Flip that script. But man, I'm talking elementary school, Bryan. This happens early, and it's really sad.
Unfortunately, man, but that's just the way it is. And it's interesting because you asked a very neutral question and they went negative. So we literally have to manipulate the question now to draw out the positive.
Exactly.
And that's the steps that we need to start taking to direct people's minds in the right way. And that's the stuff that I geek out on, man, because this is the stuff that I believe is what's going to help humanity, right, in general. And that's why I believe a lot of my content and what I teach is still very rooted in real estate and sales, but it's evolved to this because I believe this is the next step to cure ailments that maybe right now we're dealing with on the surface level, that we need to go a couple levels deeper to be able to pull out that root so that we can now have a blank canvas that, you know, we can build upon to create a change. And I think most people, and this is kind of the way that I've kind of constructed it in my mind, they think what they're dealing with that they believe to be the problem is a symptom of the real problem.
That's
right?
right.
So I think when we look at it from that perspective, it becomes easier for us to go a little bit deeper and then get to the root cause of our suffering.
And yet, you're 100% right, Brian. And yet, that is such a difficult thing for people to do. You know this, right? People live in the symptoms. They live in the symptoms and they struggle so hard to get to the root cause, right? This idea of the 5 whys, right? I'm feeling this way. Why, my head hurts. Why? Because of this, my diet, whatever it is, right? Like you have to get down to the root, to the essence. In our company, Brian, we always start with the why, right? It's never about the what. So you give someone a task, it's never about the what. They're expected to say, why am I doing this? Why does this make sense, right? To challenge that at a root level. So I think you're right, Brian. I think it's such a hard thing to get people to understand, which is how to move beyond the surface and into the root cause of whatever the thing is that needs to be fixed.
Yeah. Well, most education and most content that people are drawn towards is the how to make a
Yeah.
call, right? I mean, I even see it on my channel. I make a how to handle objections video. It gets 500,000 views. But if I
Right.
do a video like this, how to rewire your mind to be strong, it
Right.
gets 1,000 views.
Yeah.
So, but again, it's just, I believe this is what should be in the curriculum in schools to be taught to kids, right? Because
Yeah.
they can comprehend this stuff. I've done talks about these kind of subjects to kids who are in elementary school and high school, and they're getting it. They're really getting it. I might dumb down the terms and the language to match their level, but they're getting it.
Yeah.
And then I'm getting messages from their parents saying, "Whoa, he's completely different just from like that 1 hour lecture that you did
Yeah.
a year ago." So this is really what I think we need. And in our industry in particular, I think it'll allow people to have leaps and bounds and progress. Because when I talk to agents, man, 99% of them, 9 out of 10 minimum, when I get to the root of what their problem is, it's their own mind working against them, right? It's the pressure of
100%.
the outside, but they're
100%.
allowing their mind to get to them. Oh, I didn't get a listing this month. And then they beat themselves up about it and they don't show up to work the next day. It's
Yeah.
always their own mind and themselves that are holding themselves back when you trace it all the way back down to the root.
Absolutely. Brian, this has been fantastic, man. Is there anything else you wanna cover or talk about? I love this conversation, brother, and I love sort of your perspective on all of these things. It's fantastic.
Of course, yeah. I mean, if it's up to you, I mean, if you want to do like another episode, I'm more than open to it because I
I would
know
love
the
that.
time restrictions, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, let me know if you want to do another episode. We can pick a particular topic, and maybe you can ask the audience after listening to this if there's anything they specifically want to hear more of. We can definitely wrap, another time and go into it more deep if you'd like.
Brian, I'd love that. And I think you just did, right? So for those of you watching right now that are still with us, this is resonating with you, right? And Brian, you're 100% right. These are the deep, tough conversations, right? And it's not the surface stuff. This is the root of the issue. So let us know, right? Comment, let us know what you want us to dive into, what you want Brian to talk about, because Brian's got a wealth of knowledge here and it's fantastic stuff.
Yeah, even when you brought up, if I can add something
Please
like the
do.
comment, like if a comment triggers somebody, I realize that a lot of times if I'm allowing a comment to really get to me at that root, I look at it as a learning opportunity saying, are they pointing at something that's an insecurity of mine or something that I can work on so that when I read it, I'm not triggered? Because I always tell people, if I say something that triggers you, it's something in you, not me. You're allowing that word or particular thing to trigger you, right? So even if I'm saying it in a hateful way, you're allowing it to penetrate your consciousness, make you mad and rile up your emotions. So that's why if that happens to me, I don't yell at the person. I look inside myself and I say, okay, what's maybe miswired here that I'm allowing this to get to me? And then that starts that conversation to start looking for the thing that I need to resolve instead of what do most people do? Lash out to the other person. And now it becomes this back and forth that doesn't really do anything.
100% agreed. Brian, thank you so much for doing this. It's great to get to know you. This is really great stuff. So I appreciate your time today.
No, thank you, Randy. I'll definitely, I'll do it again. And I like talking about this more versus the traditional. This is how you make a cold call, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad that you do because this is the stuff I love talking about. So we're definitely going to have you back on. We'll do this again real soon. Thanks so much, Brian.
Sure. Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Bye. Well, there you go. That was awesome. What a great conversation. So, Bryan Casella, let me pull up his YouTube right here. So we got Bryan Casella on YouTube. You can just search for @Bryan Casella. You're going to find him on Instagram, on Twitter, on Snapchat, you name it. He's got a lot of videos here. Pretty deep thinker, honestly. Like, I really like his perspective on a lot of these things, and I think there's a lot to dive into. So for those of you who are, again, are still watching, please let us know what can I bring Bryan back on to talk about. There's a lot of really great stuff that we covered there that we could go deep on, and I think talking about mindset, talking about confidence, how to handle criticism, how to just figure out who you are and who you want to be, and being able to put yourself out there in that way as you build your own brand and you build, as Bryan did, frankly, your own tribe. And I love that mentality and that mindset. So I hope you enjoyed that show. I hope you enjoyed Bryan. Until tomorrow, be safe, be healthy, be happy, and we'll see you soon. Bye.